level things, some things that I think, from my experience, you need to be good at. We'll go over a little bit of who I am. So here we go. Thank you. So I'm a senior SOC analyst. I've got 10 years IT experience. It goes from anywhere from sysadmin, network tech, all the way down to help desk. I've got a whole bunch of certifications. None of them really matter. They help. They're a good resume builder. I've got 2 boys, 4 and 6. I'm a New York Jets fan. Hopefully there's not too many people down here that are of the Patriot fan type. You can follow me on Twitter, and I pretty much consider myself an InfoSec junkie. I tend to play around a lot in my home lab and do things to try to help myself and clients. So we're going to start with a few statistics. I know nobody likes these, but I feel like, they kind of help with the point of, why a SIM could or may not be necessary. So this is from the Verizon data breach report. 75% are by outsiders. So it just goes to show, a lot of stuff like, your firewalls, your AV, all that stuff is good, but it's just a piece of the puzzle, and you really need to have some more tools in your tool belt. There you go. Sorry. What tactics they use? It's hacking. I mean, this one's just kind of ridiculous. Everybody knows that the only way, or the main way people get in is through phishing, unless you've got a really bad sysadmin and they leave a lot of stuff open on the internet, which, God forbid they do that. We all know they do. These are just New York stats, just because that's where we are. I know some people may not be from New York, but so this is just a number of breaches, things that have happened, personal records that have been exposed. This is actually from the Attorney General's office. These stats, again, it's stats. We'll get into more details and stuff after. So this is like Newkirk Products, 761 records, HSBC Bank, 251,000 records, Eddie Bauer, 60,000 records, Emblem Health, another 55,000. And this is just another picture that shows by month. I mean, it seems like January, then March and April when they really start to kick in after everybody comes back from the holiday. So what is a SIM? A SIM is a security information event management system. You're going to do a lot with this depending on what your skill set is. You get centralized logging with it. You've got log correlation. You can get reports. Everybody loves reports. I mean, are there any compliance officers in here? Everybody loves reports. It's a tool. It's not something that you're going to just drop in and use. I mean, it just doesn't work that way. And if you do, then you're wasting your time and money. So real-time alerting, user activity monitoring, dashboards, these are all things that can be in one or many of the different SIM types that are out there. I mean, you heard the previous speaker mention Splunk. There's all sorts of them out there. Splunk is a big one. Everybody, like you said, everybody loves their t-shirts. Why should you have one? Yes?
How is Splunk a SIM?
So it really depends on how you use it. You can use it as log aggregation and data management, or you can, like he was saying, configure dashboards to alert you. Therefore, you're getting all of your information and your event in one location. So you can classify Splunk as a SIM and not just a data aggregation tool. So it allows you to give the reports, real-time alerting, and things like that based on how you configure it. The more the deeper you get into it, the deeper you can use it and be more effective with it. So I think I skipped a slide here. Yeah, why should you have one? Obviously, you want to use continuous monitoring, and you want to minimize the detection time. One thing that I've, since I've been on the defensive side, and I took a class with Dr. Eric Cole for SANS, is prevention is ideal, but detection is a must. It's not, when, it's if you're going to get breached. So why not have the tools in place that are going to help you detect that and minimize what happens? You're going to want to detect lateral movement. I mean, your next-gen AV, your malware, your firewalls, like I said earlier, it's a piece of the puzzle. This is another piece. You're going to put it in. You're going to configure it correctly. Hopefully you don't just drop it in and let it go. But you're going to use it, and you're going to make it function properly, and it'll help you in your detection of, malicious actors, things like that. So, why continued? Here we go. Again, we got centralized log storage, just something that, I was saying Splunk does, something that, Alien Vault or Logarithm, all of those do as well. Your compliance requirements. You've got a lot of the HIPAA, GLB, PCI, DSS, all that stuff. Those are compliance requirements. So there's a need for it. You don't just want to have it. Some of these, compliance mandated organizations require it. Incident response. If you're getting all your logs in one location, you're going to have the ability to search and quickly find out what, where, why, and get all the information you can in one location. If you don't have something like this, whether it's a syslog server or not, and you're pulling information together, how many different places do you have to go to get information? You've got to go to your Windows event log, you've got to go to syslog, you go to your firewall logs, your AV logs. With a SIEM, it helps you keep all of this stuff in one location, and it decreases your incident response time. Log normalization. I know that I don't like looking at Windows event logs without pulling out certain things. I don't know anybody else that does. So with some SIEMs that I've used, log normalization is huge for me. It makes it so I can read things pretty easy, makes a lot of it human readable, and you don't really have to fight through any XML or whatever format they're in. Policy enforcement. I mean, some of these, again, not all of them have the same functionality, but some of these you can use policy enforcement to notify you if your company is using, or somebody in your company is using Dropbox or online file storage that they shouldn't be using within your organization. That's against your corporate information security policy, and that's going to help to, keep you, apprised of what's going on within your organization, what's going on your network, what your users are doing. And again, it's going to help you when something actually happens. You can say, oh, this person was using this at this time, so here's where we start looking. It narrows your time frame down as well for when you're looking for things. As I just said, you have policy violations if somebody's using something they shouldn't. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's somewhere written in every information security policy you shouldn't be using Pandora or online radio, but I'm pretty sure somebody finds a way to do it. Ability to search the logs quickly. This goes back to my point about having to search, 4 or 5 different locations for your logs. You can search these quickly, find what you're specifically looking for. If you want to find out if a user accessed a file, or a user changed something because this document was confidential and somebody accessed it that shouldn't have been. Those are the types of things that you get with, the ability to search logs quickly. Who should use one? I mean, anybody that values or considers their data sensitive. So, to me, I have one at home. It's an open source one. I consider anything on my home network is valuable to me. It's my information. In the last talk, you heard him talking about or a couple talks ago, you heard him talking about how it was $40 per user record. If you're going to put your information out there, why not know what's going on your own home network? Again, here we go. We're touching on business compliance. You got PCI, HIPAA, FDIC, all of these different compliance organizations or regulatory organizations that require, log storage, log retention, alarming, real-time monitoring, full packet capture, those types of things. So here we go with this. This is another little statistic. 24% of mid-sized businesses don't have a dedicated IC security or information security position. It's expensive. Not everybody is going to be a help desk level person, and if you have a help desk level person doing this, then they're probably not doing it effectively. They don't have the skill set, the knowledge to be effectively performing the roles that they need to. Here's a little Chuck Norris joke. Everybody loves Chuck Norris. He tells you to do something, you're going to do it. You're not going to disobey Chuck Norris. So he's telling you should use a SIEM. How to add value to these. So when you put them in, you configure them. Research your options. Don't just go with the big brand name that's out there. Don't go with the shiny new object. Make sure it's going to fit your business. It's going to fit what you're doing, and it's going to meet the needs that you have. Some of them, it might have everything you need in one, and others might only have a couple pieces that you need. You're going to want to configure it correctly. And by configure it correctly, I don't just mean plug in a network tap or a span port and say, okay, I'm good. I mean, you're going to want to go into, tuning, looking at the data, creating dashboards, creating easy ways for you to know where you're going and what you're doing. excuse me, you want to test detection of common tools. So, excuse me, with this, what I'm trying to get the point here is use Kali, run Nmap. I know there's a couple of them that I've had out there that I've played with that I can run an Nmap scan internally on a network and I don't get anything. To me, that's alarming because somebody's going to use Nmap inside your network. You want to know about it. So that goes back up to the configuring it correctly and writing signatures or dashboards that are going to give you those alarms. And it, again, right below it, write signatures to detect lateral movement. Everybody heard, if you were here for the keynote, you heard Dave Kennedy talking about pass the hash, using that event and the specific values that come from that event when you're doing it. Those are the things that you want to do. So you want to apply offensive techniques to the SIM. To me, defense learns from offense learns from defense. That's the only way we're going to get better in the industry, and it's the only way we're going to protect clients and data more effectively. So what you want to do is, like I said, with Kali, run the tools. If you've got a web server internally, run NIC2, run Dirbuster, run the Z-Attack proxy, run all those tools. See which ones blow up your system. Spend your time figuring out what is going to trip alarms, and then look at what somebody would do that doesn't use those tools. So if they're writing a custom Python script to do an Nmap, you want to look at how that data looks on your network, and you want to, write signatures for that. Integrate threat feeds. So down here I've got Halitaxi, Alien Vault OTX, Simon, Fish Tank. Those are just a few of the ones I've played with. You want to pull this data down and use it in your SIM to correlate stuff with or run your data against. So Alien Vault OTX has a couple good ones that you can go out, and if there's something on a malicious IP or something like that, they can, you can get an alarm for that. Fish Tank is good because if there's a new phishing campaign going on, you can pull down domain names, IP addresses, and things like that. So if something in your internal network is communicating out to one of those, you can then say, all right, well, here's what I'm going to look at. Why is this user communicating with this known bad domain or known phishing domain? Did they click this link? And then, narrow it down from there. Keep working the incident response. I've had clients that have had pen tests done, and they literally get the report and they do nothing with it, and they have a SIM. If you don't catch a pen tester, ask them what they did, because they are the ones that are going to be up on the new attacks. They're going to know what they're doing, how they're doing it. So at that point, write a signature. If they did something, ask them, can I see what your network traffic looked like? Can you show me how you did this? If you get a good detailed report, you're going to see a step-by-step, how it's done, how they did it. And then you can either recreate it yourself, have your information security team recreate it, or, play with it at home. So you really need to, like I said, this goes back to the offense learning from the defense learning from the offense. You really want to take that into consideration when you're doing that. So 5 things that I think you really need to do well, we're going to go over here. These are things that should be done well when managing a SIM, whether it's in-house, outsourced. These are 5 things that I think that you need to have done well by either your MSSP or yourself. And I've already touched on a few of these, so it'll kind of be a little bit of a repeat. You want to configure it correctly. You want to use HIDS agents. You want to pull that data. Again, this SIM is not a drop in and just let it go. OSEC, Tripwire, your AV, create your span port in a location that is going to get your network flow data. You don't want to just create a span port on one switch that doesn't touch your entire network. You want to put it in your core. Get all your core traffic that's going to see what's going from what. You want to create policies, within your SIM. Create the policy for, whether or not this VLAN should be talking to this VLAN. And if something happens, if this server is talking to this server and it's not supposed to, well, then why is that happening? And create those types of things that'll help with that. You want to identify your assets. You don't just want to have IP addresses, in a SIM. If you have an IP address, it's not going to help you. Because then you're going to have to go do NS lookup, ping it, try to find all this other information. Identify your assets correctly. Give them, if you can set values within it, set a value on it, set an asset value. If it doesn't, then at least have the fully qualified domain name in there and maybe a location or an office building so that where you're looking, where that traffic's coming from, so you're not creating more work for yourself. You can integrate open source detection tools into these. Some of them, you can integrate Snort with. Some of them you can integrate Security Onion, Bro. All of those different tools can be integrated into SIEMs and give you more data. The more data you have, the better. So this one touches on the just dropping it in. You want to get a baseline of what is normal in your environment. You don't just want to let this run and go for, a week. How do you know a week is what's normal in your environment? You want to let this go 2 weeks to a month to get a baseline of what you're going to have and what your network is going to look like. Because and don't do it around holidays. Just don't, because people are going to be on vacation. CEOs might be out. Help desk has got people that are down, they're out. You want to do this at a high peak time so you can see what your users are doing, what they're accessing. If it's a lot of web traffic, if it's a lot of file server traffic, you really need a good baseline. If you don't get a good baseline, you're going to have a ton of noise and a ton of alarms or a ton of information that is just not going to help you at all. So when you've got things that are coming up and you're in your, I guess you call it baseline phase, don't just close everything out because it was your baseline phase. Look at it. Analyze it. Is this normal traffic? If it's normal traffic, all right, close it. If it's not normal traffic, say, all right, I'm going to come back to this after my baseline is complete, come back to it, analyze it, and go from there. Run vulnerability scans, when you're baselining stuff. You want to baseline what ports you've got open on servers and things like that, and then you can create policies and different types of dashboards. Say, all right, well, why is this port now open on this server when it wasn't open 2 weeks ago when I was doing my baseline? Don't get into a click-close mentality. This is something I've seen people do very frequently. They'll get into this click-close mentality because they're getting a ton of alarms. Oh, well, I saw this at this client. That does not mean that there's not something wrong with this other client just because it wasn't at that other client. So the baselines are different, going back to that, but you've got to avoid click-close mentality. If you get into a click-close mentality, it's bad. You're wasting your time and your money on the SIEM product because you're not putting it to use. You're not using it. You're just letting it sit there, and you're just closing stuff. Don't rest on past experiences. Just because 2 weeks ago you saw an IP address that was a known malicious IP, and you closed it because you verified there was nothing, that site wasn't breached. The user went to a website, there was nothing, there was no JavaScript or anything on the page. 2 weeks later, you see the same thing. There's nothing saying that the day after you analyzed that page, that page wasn't breached, and now there's JavaScript on that page, or there's malware hosted on that page. So don't just get into, I saw it last week, I'm going to ignore it, because that's not going to work. You're you're wasting your time. Tune with a purpose. Don't just tune it to tune it. Tune it for a reason. Is this normal traffic? Is this something that I can write, a dashboard for? Is it something I can write a directive for? Is it something that I need to know about? Is this something that I can put to a report and run weekly to provide to my manager? Or is it something that I need an alarm on? Sometimes you don't need an alarm on everything. Sometimes you'll get the first alarm, you'll talk to your manager about it, or you'll talk to your senior guy, and he's like, this normal traffic, we don't really have a policy about it, but we want to know when it happens. So you can put it to a report. Don't alarm on it, get it on a report, run the report, and say, all right, here's what's going on, and then let the managers can make decisions on what they want to do. Again, tuning with a purpose, you don't want to tune anything during your baseline. You want to wait till your baseline's done. Once your baseline's done, then you can go back through and you can tune it and put stuff to reports and go from there. This next one is what I like. Threat hunting. Don't just assume because there's no alarm that something's not happening in your network. Look at your logs, look at the information that's there, and look for it. Use your threat feeds. Use your knowledge. Use the research that you do on your own time or research you're doing during work. Use information you've got from one client to the next, because that's how you're going to provide the most value. Threat hunting, I've actually found a few clear text passwords for different things by doing this. One clear text password isn't necessarily going to throw an alarm, but there are some out there that you can reverse sort. So you get all of your events at the top, but your single events. So you get down into your 1, 2 events, you find some clear text passwords to routers, you find some default passwords, and then you get that to your client or your boss or the IT department, like, oh, I didn't know that was like that. I didn't know we didn't change the default password. Well, now you know, so change it. And so threat hunting, this is where I really like to spend a lot of my time. Honestly, triaging alarms is a pain in the neck. Search for those anomalies, like I said. Search to make sure that you've got your baseline. Search for those anomalies. Search for those one-offs. If you get a good attacker in your network, they're not going to blow up your SIEM. They're going to create as little noise as possible. So look to those anomalies, those one-offs. Look into them. Don't just wait for an alarm to pop, because if an alarm pops, you're probably too late, which is not necessarily a good thing, but as long as you catch it, then you should be good. So what about people? People at this point can be extremely important. So when you get a SIEM, and if you're a sysadmin a network technician in a small company, you're like, oh, we need a SIEM. These things aren't just something that you're going to learn overnight. You've got to be trained. You've got to know how to analyze data. You've got to understand how to rip apart packet data and look at certain things in order to understand what's going on. You've got to be able to look at those antivirus logs, those firewall logs. You've got to have a little bit of experience in all areas. You're a jack of all trades, master of none. If you get a sysadmin that's running a SIEM and you want them to keep your servers up and running and you want them to deal with end users needing to have their passwords reset, you are not going to get any value, and you might as well just throw the SIEM away, because they're not going to have time to work on it. So, the point about people here is, if you don't or can't afford the people, then look at your options to outsource. I'm not at all saying you have to, but it's an option that's there. So make sure you look at all your options. If you want to bring somebody in-house, make sure they've got the time. Make sure they can do these 5 things well. Otherwise, you should probably look at outsourcing and finding someone that can do and protect your network the way it should be, because those are the MSPs or MSSPs, if you want, that are going to provide value for what you're paying them. If you're paying your sysadmin to do everything, he's not going to do it well. So you want to make sure you've got the right people, the right tools, and that they understand what they have and what they're using in order to get the value out of the SIEM, whether it's in-house or outsourced. So, at this point, it's it was kind of quick. I don't know if anybody has questions. We had one earlier. If you guys have questions, it's great. If not, this was my first talk, and thank you for coming. I appreciate it, but it seemed a little nervous or whatnot, but I do appreciate it. Yep.
So for a company that does not have a decent automatic, someone first going to need to do assessing whether they need one and kind of narrow down the playing field out there.
right? So what I'm going to say is, do you have a compliance requirement that requires one? If you do have a compliance requirement, that's where you start. If you do not have a compliance requirement, you want to look at what you have for assets, because some of these are IP based for cost and other ones are just any number of assets. So, you want to look at obviously budgetary numbers. You want to look at how they're pricing it, and you want to look at, if you're going with an MSSP and you're not bringing it in-house, depth of bench, what do they have for skills, how long have they been doing it, and if you're bringing it in-house, you want to look at, like I said, how they're pricing it, what they have. Can you generate reports quickly? If your manager asks you, who accessed this website when, how quickly can you run that report? Can you get your web logs in there? Does it normalize your web logs? Does it normalize your web traffic from your WAF? What kind of information are you looking to pull into it? And do they have, whether it's a plugin or something that's going to normalize that data and allow you to search it quickly?
Why not open source?
So you can go open source, but I do know that some open source limits what you can use, and some open source has licensing issues where if you use it commercially, you have to pay for some stuff, the dashboards or things like that. So you can do it open source, great. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. I use OSIM at my house, open source. I don't have any reporting needs or anything like that I absolutely have to pay for a commercial version of anything. But there are added benefits to commercial versions of SIMs. You got a question? Service provider. Yeah. So I actually work for an MSSP right now. So you've got to have a good communication. You got to have open communication. We do a readout with clients. But if something critical comes up, we usually have a technical point of contact, whether it's you're the sysadmin or you're the CISO and you want to be the person that wants to be notified of whatever severity the alarm is, if it's a critical or whatnot, and you want to know. We get a hold of you, you get a hold of your internal guys. Your internal guys make either the necessary changes or do the on-site work. So essentially what it ends up being is we're the eyes and ears, and you're the hands. So we're going to watch your network so you can focus on other things. But if something comes up, we're going to get a hold of you and say, hey, this is what you should change. Or if we see something like, hey, this port is open on the internet, probably shouldn't be, or you've got this RDP server that's generating a lot of outbound traffic, or this person is using a Tor browser, those types of things. Or if there's policy violations, we'll run you a report. If you request a report, we run you a report and provide you that report. So there's benefits to it. I mean, it frees up your people to do the firework, stuff that keeps the company running, and it keeps us watching your network. So, yeah. Mm. Right. Yep. Right. Mm. Right. 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 So we have some like that as well, and you're completely correct. I would not say just go out and buy a SIM. If you don't have, because again, if you're bringing it in house, some of the things that you're not getting is you're not getting 24/7. That person's going to take vacations. That person's going to call in sick. That person's going to be out on leave at some point. So that hybrid type that you're talking about is actually, it's a really good model, because if that person is out, you can fall back on the managed SOC, and use them for, I guess you could, that's escalation essentially. Like, so if your person is on there and they're not quite understanding what this alarm is, they can escalate up to the SOC and say, hey, you guys have more experience, you got more information on these things, you do this more. What's going on here? Is this something I should be alarmed about? Or is this something I should, I don't have to worry about? Those types of different things. So, yeah, I agree with the fact that, that hybrid fusion, as you called it, solution is very good. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So again, it's kind of like you pay for what you get. So if you want all the bells and whistles, you can get all the bells and whistles. But I don't know, I know of ones that are out there. You've got Alien Vault, Splunk, Logarithm, all those different, just a couple off the top. I think Dell SecureWorks has a new one out that they're using as well. Obviously, Dave Kennedy's got, binary defense. But what I don't know what they use for Siem on the back end. They're an MSSP. But what you want to do when you're looking for that is you really want to, like I said earlier, you want to find out what you need. Obviously, you have the compliance requirements, so reporting is a big thing. So you want to make sure you can report. As far as, how long you have to retain logs, what that retention time is, will determine your space and what you're going to use internally for that. And it's really, you can use an open source one. Say your MSP comes up and creates some product. Yes, exactly. And I know with some open source stuff, you've got a lot more tuning to do because doesn't have pre-configured stuff. So we, like us, some of those threat feeds, we have pre-configured stuff that gets applied to all of our clients. So out of the box, you're going to get whatever's configured on a baseline for those threat feeds, not for what's going on in your network. I have seen, and we have worked with some smaller clients that they get sticker shock, is really what it is. I've worked for a couple MSSPs actually, and when you tell them how much it's going to cost, they're like, serious? Like, you're just watching my logs. And they're like, it's a little more than that, It's a little more than just looking at your logs. There's analysis and stuff that goes into it. There's tuning it. There's maintenance of the platform. A simple update can break it, just like a Windows platform. So there's a lot that goes into it. And I don't know anything that's going to be in a cost range. I think a lot of it is you have to sell the value. You have to sell the value of what you're providing, and you have to sell the value of what you're giving them, with reports or, a breach. One thing that I've seen people use is, hey, look, this company over here that's right across the street or in the next state over had a breach. You keep that it can't happen to me, mentality, or I'm too small for that to happen, which I know you've probably heard all the time. It's not going to happen to me. I'm too small. My data is not valuable to anybody. Okay. You keep telling yourself that, and then when it happens, call me. Yeah. Yeah. So we actually, the way we have it configured is we only send alarm data. We don't send the actual information. So we get a notification there's an alarm, but that data doesn't leave the client site. So all that PII, all the PHI stays there, and we actually have to log into the client Siem in order to view that information, because we don't want any of that going over. And the communication that happens from the client USM to our endpoint is all over an encrypted tunnel. So we've got a VPN going both ways so that we can get to it and they can send their information up to us in a safe manner, because we obviously don't want to have that information where we're hosting our stuff, because then we're responsible for all of that. So we don't want that either. Anybody else? All right. Thanks for coming.